Previously on Geezerology 2.0. We are going to be watching, that's Scott's pick, Mermaids, starring Cher, Winona Ryder, Christina Ricci, and Bob Hoskins. Hello, everybody. Mermaids was a 1990 film from director Richard Benjamin, starring Cher, Winona Ryder, and Bob Hoskins. And notably, it was the screen debut for Christina Ricci, who was 10 years old when this movie was released. Yeah, this was at the tail end of Cher's run as a movie megastar. She was one of the biggest stars of the 1980s, but her star began to fade shortly after this movie came out. Winona Ryder, on the other hand, was on a pretty good roll when she did Mermaids. This is pretty much at the beginning of her career, but she had appeared in Beetlejuice, Heathers, Great Balls of Fire, Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, Edward Scissorhands, and Mermaids, all in this 3-year period between 1988 and 1990. And then she went on after this to hook up with Francis Ford Coppola for Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course, Bob Hoskins was one of those guys that his face was everywhere for about 30 years. And he was coming off of his biggest movie, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which pretty much made him a household name in 1988. And of course, Christina Ricci went on to become a star with her next movie in 1991 when she appeared as Wednesday Addams in The Addams Family. And she's been finding some pretty steady work in the 35 years since Mermaids, as we all know. Richard Benjamin, I don't know if you guys are too familiar with him, but he was one of these guys whose face was all over TV in the 1980s as a character actor. He was in a lot of movies in the 80s. There's a lot of TV shows in the 80s. But I didn't really realize that he was also a fairly prolific director. He made about 13 or 14 movies over the course of about 20 years. And a couple of the titles that I recognize from his filmography, other than Mermaids, was The Money Pit in 1986 and My Stepmother is an Alien from 1988. But Mermaids, I saw this for the first time when it landed in theaters back in 1990, and I've seen it 3 or 4 times since. And though it's never been in the discussion for one of my favorite movies of all times, I love this movie every time I watch it. It's I never really remember much about it over the years, but every time I watch it, I love it. It's great, and that scene at the end is the most memorable scene to me. The one thing I remembered from the first time I saw it in 35 years ago was that scene in the end where the 3 women are all dancing around in the kitchen. I just always thought that was great. But Winona Ryder is the central character here, and it's really a coming of age story for her. She's trying to find her identity, as a high school kid. And she's in the shadow of her mother, who is just really charismatic and really unstable, and upends her family life every time she gets in relationships. Cher gets in relationships, falls in love, hangs out with guys, and then has nasty breakups. And then when that happens, she puts her 2 daughters into a car, and they just move to another city and start over. And this is the setup of Winona Ryder's story, as she's trying to, she's just trying to come to grips with life and find an identity for herself among all these disruptions in her life. A lot of the narrative is driven by voiceover work by Winona Ryder, who's really, really good in this movie. I find it really funny. I find it's really heartbreaking movie in parts, and it's just these people, they're just real people, and I just feel like they're real people in this movie, and I just go on this emotional ride, especially with Winona Ryder, every time I watch this movie. Let me turn it over to Bob. I don't know if Bob's ever seen this before, but Bob, tell us what you think about this one.
Yeah, this was my first exposure to Mermaids, and if there's any justice in the world, it'll be my last. Um, I'm completely opposite from you on this one, Scott. Yeah, this did nothing for me. I thought it was a disjointed mess, and it was trying to figure out whether it wanted to be an absurdist comedy or a moving family drama. I appreciated the acting in it. Cher is actually a really good actress. Winona Ryder is excellent. I love Bob Hoskins. So I thought the acting was great, but it just at times was just completely absurd. We got this girl that, she's Jewish, but now suddenly she's fascinated with Catholicism and she kisses a boy and suddenly is convinced she's pregnant. So you have all of this absurd stuff, and then it segues into trying to be a serious family thing. I just thought it was all over the place. Like I said, I did enjoy the actors in it. I thought they did a great job, but the movie to me just kind of didn't know where it was going. At least that's what I felt about it anyway. And so yeah, it did not do much for me.
I have to go on the record saying that of all genre movies, the type of genre movie I least like are coming of age movies. I did not like my own coming of age. I don't need to see anyone else's coming of age. So that's the big qualifier. So within that framework, however, I thought the movie was interesting. I mean, I don't think I would watch it again, but I appreciated the both the setting, which of course is Massachusetts, and it was filmed primarily in the States. So it's very evocative to me of its place because I'm a New Englander as well. And I thought the three actresses in particular were quite good, and I could actually relate to them as a family. The relationship between the sisters and the mother and the eldest daughter, it sort of rang true to me. And I note what Bob says about the absurdity of it, and I think the absurdity actually makes it more real, because I think if people have these kind of weird dynamics where you're growing up always on the move, you tend to latch onto things that maybe don't make much sense. And so I think Winona Ryder being a Jewish girl who is convinced that her trajectory in life is to become a nun is kind of crazy. And of course, what becomes even crazier is that when they moved to Massachusetts, well, I'll tell you two things. One, they've got it's not the nicest house, but it's on the coast. And do you know how much that place would cost? Oh my gosh. Anyway, they are adjacent to a convent, which is, well, that's handy, since that's what, Winona is all about. And she discovers that there's a caretaker who's about 10 years older than she is, a very handsome young man who's a very sweet guy. And they do develop a kind of a buddy and then a more romantic relationship. Within the framework, it all sort of makes sense. I also, Bob Hoskins is fine. The thing that was striking to me, the one part that I couldn't quite square, was that the Cher character is, very, I won't say promiscuous, but she's, she develops these relationships. She doesn't want to get entangled. She was married when she was 16, and that resulted in the pregnancy of her, now her oldest daughter, who's now the same age. And what didn't quite make sense is their relationship is sort of like older sister, younger sister, and sometimes mother-daughter. But the fact that Winona thinks that she's pregnant after kissing the handyman didn't make any sense to me, because obviously she's, she actually does not particularly appreciate her mother's approach to life, not just for the, kind of the dramatic uprooting, but the fact that, she seems to be always in these relationships and is doing, quote, disgusting things. So I don't know that she understood that she couldn't get pregnant from a kiss. It didn't make any sense, but it really is a critical thing, because it drives the back half of the movie in terms of, what happens going forward. So that was a little crazy as far as plot development. It seemed, if you hold it up and you look at it, it doesn't make much sense. But if you don't pay too much attention to it, I guess, you can soldier on with it. I thought one of the things that, speaking of things that really rang true, although it was a little before my time, I was just 3 years old, but, during this period, it's set in 1963, the back half of the year, there's the Kennedy assassination, and the whole town, from the school room where Winona's in high school through the town itself, as they get information about what's happened in Dallas, it really seemed like that would be a resident kind of experience. And the one thing that I also found that was kind of interesting was that the notion that Winona Ryder has these kind of feelings, and then she can't quite articulate them to her mother in a way that would allow for a better dialogue. That seemed a little. I mean, I guess it's true. That's happened. I mean, I grew up with two younger sisters, and their relationship with our mom was, typical of a mother-daughter's kind of a thing. So that I guess kind of makes sense. I will say one of the best and most realistic parts of the whole movie was when, Winona gets in trouble deeply because she was not paying attention. Her daughter her sister almost died. She's a big swimming enthusiast, and she's always trying to swim around. And so one thing led to another. There was a little alcohol involved, and everyone survives okay. But when she comes back home, Cher slaps her right across the face. They have a very fractious argument, and it reminded me the last time I heard a slap that real was when Joan Crawford hit her daughter in Mildred Pierce, which, I mean, my ears are still ringing from that one. So that was a pretty realistic slap. Anyway,
I'm sure there was a little ADR happening there.
Could be. I mean, it was loud. You could feel the sound wave.
The thing where she thought she was pregnant after she had this kiss with a guy. Well, remember that happened. That was all driven. This was all set in the summer through the winter of 1963, and about halfway through the movie, we get to November, and where Winona Ryder's character is in her class at school, and her teacher comes walking into the room crying, and that's when the Kennedy assassination happened. And just as an aside, I mean that just knocked me out because that's one of my earliest vivid memories is of me. I was in the fourth grade at the time, sitting in the classroom at school, coming back from lunch, and the teacher wasn't in the room, and she was gone a long time, and everybody's going, "Where's Mrs. Lingle? Where's Mrs. Lingle?" And then she came walking into the classroom crying and told us what had happened. And that's one of the vivid memories of my life, right? But anyway, so this scene happened, and everybody was just stunned and emotional and everything like that, and so that's what led to her going and finding this guy she had a crush on. He was the guy who he rang the bell in the bell tower at the nunnery, right? And she went up to the bell tower and found him up there, and they were pretty emotional from the news of Kennedy and everything, and they embraced for the first time, and they kissed, and everything was just real emotional. And then all of a sudden, she realized what was happening. She freaked out and ran away, and I got it that, and it explained later because, she went to the clinic to have a doctor examine her because she thought she was pregnant, and the kicker was the doctor said, "Why do you think you're pregnant? You're still a virgin," right? After he examined her, but I took it the whole thing was that and part of it was that the doctor asked her, "Has your mother ever talked to you about sex?" And like that, and she obviously she hadn't. And so I took it to mean there was more than just a kiss that made her pregnant. She had this, I think she felt that she not only had a kiss with this guy, but she had this really emotional experience with this guy in that moment. And I think that's what led her to believe that, because also part of what was going on here was that she was, like Bill said, she was I don't know how long she'd been doing it, but she was really obsessed with learning how to become a good Catholic, and wanting to become a nun, and thinking that as her career perspective and everything like that. And part of what was going on, part of what was happening, what part of her inner dialogue that was happening here that we got through her voiceover, was that she was reading about the virgin birth, and so she thought that this real emotional experience that she had was the same thing that happened with Mary, mother of Jesus, right?
Immaculate conception.
And right. So she thought that's actually what happened. Was that she had this really emotional experience with this guy, and that's what led to her pregnancies, because she had no idea what sex was all about, right?
But don't you think that her mother would have told her? I mean, given the fact that her mother was...
Well, apparently she not. Apparently she didn't. Apparently she didn't, because her mother, because her mother was pretty shut off. She was kind of a party gal and setting up, and she never really had any meaningful discussions with her daughters, obviously.
To me, it's really tough to mesh two different genres. And so on one hand, they had the absurdist comedy here, and then they're also trying to make a heartfelt family drama. And yeah, it's a coming of age thing for the teenage daughter, but it's also a coming of age thing for the mom, because in many ways, she hasn't grown up either. So they're both having the coming of age experience. So we go from the absurdist comedy to suddenly a near death, and then, the very powerful scene where Cher slaps the crap out of her daughter. So we have suddenly that really intense moment. Then we jump back into lighthearted comedy with going to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then dancing around the table. So to me, they didn't mesh those two genres well. I think I would have liked this if it would have stayed a comedy, or if they would have turned it into a serious drama, really exploring all of the things going on in these people's
Well, explain to me what you think was absurdist comedy. There's no absurdist comedy here.
So Cher is in the back seat of a car humping her boss, and he suddenly says, well, I got to go back to my wife, and then they're fleeing. You got a girl who's thinking that she's Catholic. The mom makes these weird meals, where she's stuffing marshmallows onto meat sticks. I mean, so it was, so all of that was very comedic.
Your definition of absurdist comedy is different than my definition. Absurdist comedy to me is like Monty Python,
Okay,
right?
Whatever. But anyway, I just didn't think that the two meshed very well. And then, okay, here's the absurdist comedy part. At one point, Winona Ryder takes her mom's car and flees, and she goes to Connecticut. That's her sanctuary.
She goes to New Haven, though.
But my point is, I think it's just a term you're using. I mean, that's not absurdist comedy.
Okay, it was a comedy that suddenly segued to intense drama and then segued back to comedy, and I didn't think they pulled it off.
Oh, okay. I saw a different movie. I thought it was very, very well integrated. I thought the whole movie was very real. I thought there was just real people and real real circumstances going on here. I mean, it was exaggerated. I mean, things were exaggerated, probably, but not absurdist.
Well, but Cher's character, from what we have seen, has a history of hooking up with her bosses and people like that. And Cher in this movie, her character, Mrs. Flax, she's super hot. I mean, she's got the bouffant hair and she dresses in for that period, sexy clothes and stuff. And then suddenly she gets involved with Bob Hoskins, who owns a shoe store, who is short, rotund, bald, and as nebbish as you can get. So he's totally, absolutely different than any of the men she's ever hooked up with before. But she doesn't just build toward being with him. It's just like she meets him and 5 minutes later, okay, they become a thing.
She betted him right away, which was obviously her history.
Right, but he wasn't her normal kind of guy.
She didn't seem to be overly selective. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think what happened is that he was a guy. He was just a guy, which was her MO. It's just whoever comes along and smiles at her, she goes far. But the difference here is that Hoskins just became this stabilizing force in her life, and when she realized that he was doing that he was really trying to get really, really close and binding with the daughters like he was and everything like that. That freaked her out, because that's not what she was here for. And apparently that had happened before, because the same pattern started happening again, where this was happening, and she got freaked out, and she decided she didn't want any part of this, because she never has wanted any part of that. And she started throwing all of her belongings in a suitcase and wanted to go, and that's what led with the big showdown between her and Charlotte, her daughter, the Winona Ryder character, where Charlotte said, "No, we're not going to do this anymore," and they started screaming at each other. And got the big slap and everything, and Mrs. Flax was convinced that well, okay, I'll try to do it a different way this time. Maybe this time it'll work, and that's pretty much how the movie ended, right?
But I will give it props for capturing the look of the '60s. I thought that was
a great period piece.
I enjoyed that. And the portion dealing with the assassination of John Kennedy, I'm with you, Scott. Man, I flash back to, remembering the announcement in school, and, pardon the cliche, but I literally can still vividly remember, what it was going on. And even though a very young life, I still vividly remember that. And that I thought they did a great job with. So there are parts of the film that I do appreciate. Like I say, I do give props to the acting. I thought that was great. I just wish it would have been more stay with the comedy or go with it being a drama. I just didn't think in this particular case the two meshed well.
Bill, anything to
add? I appreciated the undercurrent of baseball that popped up periodically. So being a Red Sox,
did you catch the big anachronism? Speaking of that, where early in the film, it was before the Kennedy assassination or something, where somebody asked Mrs. Flax about what he talked about after sex or something like that, and she said, "Well, all men want to talk about is AstroTurf and how it's going to ruin baseball." Well, this was in 1963. AstroTurf wasn't invented until 1965. for when the Astrodome opened, right? Yeah, I caught that one right away.
Well, I like the idea that Hoskins was going to win $20 by identifying the last handful of batters who hit over 400. And I couldn't quite figure. I didn't replay the dialogue, but I mean, he was right about, Ty Cobb and Shoeless Joe.
Lashley. Yeah.
Yeah, but so did Ted Williams. I didn't know what he was. There was a framework that he was working on, and I can't remember what it was. But he won the $20. So.
Right. And the other thing is that you just can't go to Cooperstown, the Baseball Hall of Fame, and touch Lou Gehrig's glove.
No, you can't.
I was just going to ask you baseball about it. Could I do that?
No, you can see
You
it.
can't just do. You can see it, yeah, but it's got to be behind a couple of layers of protective glass.
And then I do have a question. When Charlotte took her mom's car and fled, and she goes into Connecticut and goes up to this house and just knocks on the door. Did she just pick that place at random?
I think her car ran out of gas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I knew I missed something in there. Okay, so that's why she was there.
Yeah. She got stranded there. Her car ran out of gas. And that too. I mean, you look at that. You watch that now in 2025, and you say, oh, that never happened. But back in that age, that happened all the time. I mean, I remember a couple of times when I got turned around wandering through the woods and ended up on the other side of the woods, just going up and knocking on somebody's door and saying, "Can you help me? I need to call my parents. I don't know where I'm at." I remember doing that a couple of times, and that people did that back in 1963. They don't do it in 2025, but they did back in 1963, right?
Knocking on somebody's door these days could cost you your life.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a pretty good idea what's going to happen here, but Bill, what do you rate this on a 5-star scale?
2.5. I'm being a little generous too, because it's not my movie, as I said. But the craftsmanship I thought was great. The acting was good. 2.5.
Bob?
I'll give it a 2. I like the acting. I like some of the scenes, and just wish that it would have gone one direction or the other in terms of whether it wanted to be a comedy or a drama.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. It's not a masterpiece of a movie, understood that, but man, I love this thing. Every time I watch it, I love this movie. Okay, well, thanks for listening, everybody. Join us next week, and we'll talk to you soon. So long. Next week on Geezerology 2.0. Let's spin the wheel and see where we're going next. We're going to have a look at, that's a Bob's choice, a Woody Allen film called Radio Days. So that's next week on Geezerology 2.0. Did you enjoy this video? If so, please smash that subscribe button and drop a comment to let us know what you think about the movie we just discussed. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Geezerology 2.0.